Hello everyone, and welcome to our final video for fixing the Steam Link. This video we're going to be installing RetroARch via Windows and Linux. Now I will not be including a section on where to or how to source ROMs, so please do not ask me in the comments. Let's get into it. Now, just like our last video, due to steps being almost identical, we're going to prep our hardware and software with Windows and Linux at the same time, and only show them on Linux if they are specific to that OS. RetroARch is a nice, free open source front end for emulators, game engines, and media players. It's pretty much the visual graphics interface for running emulators and games. I know I probably butchered what RetroARch is, but since we can do a lot with it and we have seen what it is, why don't we go ahead and talk about installing it. Quick disclaimer, this video is for educational purposes only. I do not condone the use of illegally obtained ROMs and emulation. You can find ROMs online anywhere and pages on Reddit. I'm not going to show where to get those in this video either. For hardware, you're going to need a laptop or desktop running Windows or Linux, a 4 to 8 GB USB drive, your Steam Link, power cables for it, a keyboard and or controller, its cables for that, and some way to view the Steam Link like a monitor or a TV. Just make sure you have all the necessary cables. And that brings us to software prep. Now, for software, whether you're on Windows or Linux, open up a web browser and go to the GitHub page for fpscan. Link is in the description below. We're going to click on Releases, and we're going to download the RetroARch.tgz file. And so we don't have to come back, download the cores.zip file. Now save these both into an easily accessible folder and close out the browser when you're done. Now we need to format the USB stick as a FAT32 or extension 4. Now being on Windows, go to Partition Manager. If it's not FAT32, just right click, hit Format, change the file system to FAT32. Now extension 4 can be easily done on Linux, so we just need to make it FAT32. Now after you plug in your USB stick, we can partition it in two different ways. Go to the Partition Manager, or if it's already partitioned, under here. In File Explorer, right click, hit Properties. We can see that it's a FAT file system, but just to make sure it's set correctly, we're going to go to Format. We're going to name it Steam Link Drive. You can actually name this whatever you want. We're going to do this as an extension 4 and hit Next. Hit Format and wait for it to finish formatting. And now that's done, just hit the X and go to the newly formatted USB stick. Once it's formatted, open up the USB drive in File Explorer. If you want, you can rename the volume anything you want. Create a folder on the base directory, call it Steam Link. Now, I don't know if it's case sensitive, but lowercase is perfectly fine. Enter it and create another folder called Apps and enter that folder. Now, this is what the directory should look like. It should be your USB, Steam Link, and then Apps. In another folder, go to where we downloaded the applications. In a new folder, open the RetroARch.tgz file. And enter the RetroARch file. Now here's everything we need. So go back one and copy the RetroARch folder into the apps folder. Once it's done, the directory should look like this. Again, inside the RetroARch folder are our files, and not another folder and then our files. So again, it should be Steam Link, apps, RetroARch, and here are our files. Now, for the next step, there are two ways we can do this, via USBMount or SSH. Enabling SSH will allow us to, at any time, SSH into the Steam Link and access its directory. USBMount is something that may stop working at any point due to changes. I'm going to run through both to explain. First up is SSH. Let's add our SSH files, or you can zip to the timestamp for USBMount if you want to do that instead. Here under the apps folder, right click, create new folder, call it config. Inside that, create a new folder, call it system. And then in that folder, create a new text file and call it enable ssh.txt. Now you don't have to put .txt at the end, and actually keep this as a blank file, no extensions. Either way it's going to work. Just make sure your directory path is identical to this one. And that's it for enabling SSH. To briefly describe what the USBMount script does, is it will automatically connect any USB device to a certain degree when you boot up the application, allowing us to use that as an additional storage device within the Steam Link. We're just going to use that to house any files we want for RetroARch. To do USBMount, go to the Clash04 GitHub page down in the description below, and we're going to download the USBMount toggle Steam Link app for the Steam Link. Now we're going to go to the releases and download the .tgz file. Again, put it in a folder easily accessible. Once it's done downloading, go back to our root directory folder on our Steam Link USB drive that we're making. Go into the Steam Link, go under apps, open up the USBMount toggle, and extract the USBMount toggle folder into that folder. Close them out, and this is what it should look like. And even though I didn't show it on Linux, the process is the exact same with the location of the files and the directory list and all. And that pretty much concludes our software prep. So eject your USB drive and let's get into installing this thing. Quick disclaimer, I'm not responsible for the breaking of your device. All of these applications are still in development and are experimental, so not everything will work. Follow this tutorial at your own risk. So head over to your Steam Link, plug in the USB stick to any one of the USB-A ports, plug the Steam Link into a monitor or TV via the HDMI, and then plug in the power cable. Now I'd also suggest plugging in a controller, as RetroARch is a lot easier to set up on a controller than it is on keyboard and mouse. And that's in my opinion, but you can plug in either or. Then let's get into installing this software. Now it's going to take a couple minutes to actually install on the Steam Link, or at least copy over to. Now I'm going to be installing both the USBMount and the SSH and the RetroARch application all on our Steam Link here, so mine's going to take a little bit longer than yours should. The time it's going to take to install also depends on your USB and its speeds. Once it's done installing and rebooting a couple times, it's going to boot into the Steam OS, and here we should have our RetroARch application. We're also going to have anything else we added, like the USBMount. We'll cover that after. If you want, you can turn off the Steam Link, unplug it, as the application should have finished installing, plug it back into power, and let's get into it. Now that our programs are installed, there's one of two ways we can finish setting up the RetroARch software. The first is by launching the app, updating it, and downloading the cores. The second way would be doing it through SFTP, through FileZilla, on that enable SSH file that we put on earlier. First, we'll do the SSH way, and then we'll hop back over, launch the RetroARch application, and we'll do it the basic way. Before we actually go on to the RetroARch application, why don't we copy over the files that we need and do it through SSH. To do so, we need to go down to settings, go to network, and find our IP address. So here on our network setup page, just take note of your IP address, and let's go back to our computer so we can copy over those files via SFTP. Now when it comes to adding the cores onto the RetroARch application, we could have done it through our USB stick when we copied it over initially, but we're just going to use FileZilla just to show pretty much the same thing. So I have our IP address of our Steam link, root, password is going to be steamlink123 with a port of 22. Now that we're connected to the Steam link, just hit OK or yes to accept the fingerprint key. Now I went ahead and already extracted the Gearboy libretro SO file or the core. We're just going to copy that over to test with. If you're looking for specific cores, extract the one from that cores folder we downloaded earlier. Just open up that zip file and just copy out the one you want. To get to the cores folder that we need to get to, click on Home, then click on Apps, then go into RetroARch. And here we're going to be looking for the cores folder. But since there is no cores folder, we can just right click, create new directory and enter it, name the folder cores, and then in there, copy over the Gearboy libretro.so file. Now we can technically do this in the RetroARch application itself. This is just another way to copy files over manually. Alright, now with that out of the way, we're going to hop back over to our Steam link and look at the regular way of installing cores through downloads. So why don't we continue the setup process for RetroARch, and then we can finally move over to using USBMount. Alright, back on our Steam link. Since RetroARch is an app on the Steam link, it should just connect straight to the internet through the Steam link itself. We can verify this later on within the RetroARch application. So let's click on RetroARch and finish this setup process. First thing we're going to do is run through some updates. So on your home screen, scroll down to Online Updater. Click on that, click on Core Updater, and on the bottom left of the screen, which unfortunately you can't see, it's going to download the list of cores that we can update. You can manually select these zip files of the cores you want to update, and then later on we can actually download them. Once that's done, back out, go down to Update Joypad Profiles, and click on that. That's going to download all of the Joypad profiles so we can use other controllers and everything, not just limited to that Steam Link controller. And then once that's done, all we need to do is just back out to the main menu. Now we need to talk about loading cores. Now, just like the cores we brought over via FileZilla, to find them, you click on Load Core, and then that would be the subdirectory of our files. Now we can also find the files found on our USBMount, which we still actually have to set up. So before we set up USBMount, let's also download some manual cores and click on Download a Core, and it's going to bring up a list of all the cores we can download. There you're just going to select the core you want, and it will download and create that cores folder. Now I know I keep bringing up USBMount. Downloading cores straight to the Steam link will use some storage on the device. It is very limited, so just fair warning when it comes to that. So after we downloaded our core here, why don't we get on to USBMount so we can finally get on to playing some games. So I was looking through the run.sh script that USBMount uses. It looks for the SD1 device. It's on that block and mounts it to /mnt/disk. Now we're going to add some files on it through File Explorer. I'm going to SSH into our Steam link to list out the directories. I'm also going to check out it on FileZilla to kind of just double check and see if it actually links to it. So why don't we just run through everything and go from there. Now you don't have to do this, but it's just something I wanted to show and test with. If you wanted to follow along, the password is steamlink123 all lowercase, just like before. And it seems like our device is actually plugged into SDA1, which is actually exactly what we want. Now, if we run the USB mount toggle, I'm unsure if it's actually going to unplug it per se. So why don't we just hit it? All right, so I just clicked on USB mount toggle. Let's type in black ID again. And it seems like it's still plugged in. So why don't we unplug our USB stick? We're gonna add some RetroARch files to it. And we're gonna try to play some games. Just so we don't keep changing up our applications, we're gonna actually delete these two folders with all of our RetroARch and everything from that. In here, just to make it easier, I'm just gonna create a folder, call it RetroARch, and then here do a cores folder, and then a ROMs folder. Now, fair warning, most ROMs are large in size, so I always suggest doing this not on the actual root directory of the Steam Link and doing it on like a USB. We'll try a couple Game Boy Advanced games. Now, there would be multiple reasons why a ROM just wouldn't work. It could be the file itself, it could be the emulator, even could be the device the emulator is running off of. Now, once you finish copying all your ROMs over and everything, all you need to do is just unplug your USB stick, plug it into your Steam Link, give it a good old reboot, and then I'm just going to stay here on our PC to see if SSH still works, and we still have access to that new SDA1 folder location. To cut it short, we do. Just don't forget to actually click on the USB mount application so it actually mounts your USB to that mount location. Now, we don't actually have to load a core first, we can jump straight to the content, but I was mistaken. Turns out that the core I had downloaded was actually incorrect for Game Boy Advance ROMs, so I went back and installed MGBA. So we're going to load our MGBA core, and then we'll load our content from our USB stick. So the content, go to load content, go to slash, go to mount, disk, the disk name. Here's all of our Game Boy Advance. We're going to run Pokemon Emerald. See if we can get this to run with MGBA. Alright, so you couldn't see it. It disconnected our control. Oh, well, we're good. We're still working. Alright, everything seems to be working. We hit which button to exit? Alright, seems like the square and the triangle button work. Pressing the share and options button, this is all for PS4 controllers, brings up our quick menu for RetroARch. We can save, take screenshots, etc., everything we want. If we want to close though, okay, unfortunately it seems like I cannot quit the program because it disconnected our controller. But if I hit load core, nope, that doesn't work. All right, so there are some bugs. It means I can't quit RetroARch, but I also can't do anything else. I can't save. So yeah, there are still some bugs with this. It could just be the controller I'm using. Could be the profiles. There's plenty of still things to work with this. And something I've noticed, the USB stick does get a bit hot, as well as the Steam Link. So probably use a fan or something if you're gonna run this for long periods of time. Now here are a few errors and fixes that I found. If you get the error where it's disconnecting the controller itself, like here on screen, you can kind of see it, it means you're gonna have to use the Steam controller itself. No other controllers in my testing worked, neither did a keyboard and mouse. The fix for this is just to downgrade to the other version of RetroARch found in the description below. Just pick the one that doesn't list it as a Steam controller. Just pick the one that's not labeled as Steam controller only. Another error I've found is with specific versions of USBMount. Sometimes it just doesn't want to work. The only fix for this is just checking the version of USBMount and just kind of cycling them to find which one is compatible with your Steam Link. And then another error and fix I found is the Steam Link not being able to run certain games on RetroARch. This could be the core you download or just the ROM file itself. You just have to cycle through and modify some settings files just until you find that sweet spot for both the ROM and the core itself. Any other issues you may have, comment down below and I'll try my best to assist. To remove the RetroARch application, just hit the delete button on your controller and hit the button for yes. And that's pretty much it. And that brings us to the end. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope this tutorial gave some insight into modifying the Steam Link. It's nice to see that we're able to use what would be more e-waste in the world as another alternative device. Now, I don't say go ahead and go buy one, as there are plenty of alternatives to use in place of the Steam Link, but it's nice to see that. Consider subscribing for more content like this. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike it, and I'll see you all in the next video.